70 years on the throne, and when Queen Elizabeth II passed away, she took entire traditions with her. From secret codes to centuries-old ceremonies, even daily habits ended overnight. Today, we're counting down 12 royal traditions that vanished the moment the Elizabethan era closed its doors. Let's start with the smallest traditions first, the quiet, everyday rituals that disappeared forever after her passing.
I didn't matter.
Tradition 12, the morning music no one will hear again. Every morning at 9 a.m., the Queen's day began with the sound of bagpipes drifting through her window. The Piper to the Sovereign, a role created by Queen Victoria, played for 15 minutes outside her residence, Balmoral, Windsor, or Buckingham, no matter the weather. The ritual was personal. The Queen loved it so much that even during state duties, she refused to let the tradition lapse. But after her passing, the music fell silent. King Charles chose not to continue it, ending one of the monarchy's most humanizing rituals. At her funeral, the same piper who woke her each day, Major Scott Methven, performed one final haunting lament, "Sleep, dearie, sleep," as her coffin was lowered into Windsor's royal vault, a farewell that closed the private soundtrack of her reign forever. Tradition 11, the royal stables gone silent. Horses weren't just a hobby for Queen Elizabeth, they were her lifelong passion. She bred thoroughbreds, attended every major race, and turned events like the Queen Elizabeth Stakes into fixtures of the royal calendar. But after her passing, the stables changed hands. Many of her prized horses were auctioned off, and several races lost her personal title, renamed under King Charles or other patrons. What was once the Queen's private equestrian empire slowly dissolved, one stable and one tradition at a time. For a monarch so often photographed on horseback, the empty paddocks feel like a silent echo, the end of a royal chapter galloping quietly into history. Tradition 10, the funeral duty that finally changed. For over a century, the state funeral gun carriage was pulled by sailors, always men, in a solemn tradition dating back to Queen Victoria's funeral in 1901. Row after row of naval ratings, white gloves gripping ropes, pulling the coffin of the monarch on its final journey. But at Queen Elizabeth's funeral, something historic happened. For the first time, women joined the ranks, hauling the same carriage through London's streets. It was a small detail in a day of grand pageantry, yet it broke with generations of custom. The tradition of the gun carriage endures, but the image of female sailors taking their place among the ranks marks a quiet turning point, a symbol of a monarchy adapting in real time. Tradition 9, the vigil no longer kept by men alone. For decades, the Vigil of the Princes was a strictly male tradition. The Queen's sons, Charles, Andrew, Edward, and sometimes grandsons, would stand in silence around the coffin, heads bowed, swords pointed to the ground. It was a moment heavy with history, repeating itself across royal generations. But in 2022, something changed. Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, took her place among the men at St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh, becoming the first woman ever to join the vigil. It was a quiet but striking shift, the end of an all-male rite that had stood for over a century. Tradition didn't vanish completely, but it would never look the same again. But stay tuned, because one of the strangest royal rituals ended with her, and it involved buzzing wings and whispered words. Tradition 8, the 12 days that ended with her. For Queen Elizabeth, the days following a monarch's death were mapped out in exacting detail. A 12-day period of national mourning, unchanged for generations. Flags at half-mast, bells muffled, ceremonial dress code enforced. The country moved in unison, each day scripted down to the minute. But with her passing, royal planners have already hinted that future monarchs may shorten the ritual. A faster, more modern era may not pause the same way Britain did for Queen Elizabeth II. Her funeral closed the book on a tradition where the entire nation stood still for nearly 2 weeks, a rhythm of grief and ceremony tied to one woman and perhaps one era alone. Tradition 7, the silk thread that snapped with the Queen. For decades, the Queen's coronation gowns and ceremonial robes were crafted from silk produced at the Royal Silk Farm near Sandringham. The tradition dated back generations, creating a tangible thread between monarch and heritage, literally woven into history. The royal silk tradition had already begun to fade years before Queen Elizabeth's death. The Lullingstone Castle Silk Farm, once responsible for weaving the fabric for coronation robes and royal gowns, quietly shut its doors in 2011. No royal announcement marked the closure, no ceremonies commemorated the end. By the time Queen Elizabeth passed in 2022, the centuries-old practice of producing silk for the crown had already unraveled, replaced by modern suppliers with no direct ties to the monarchy's past. It was an ending almost no one noticed at first, a centuries-old thread in Britain's royal pageantry snipped without fanfare, leaving future coronations to source their splendor elsewhere. Tradition 6, the code phrase, "the world won't hear again." For decades, the death of Queen Elizabeth was planned under one phrase: London Bridge is down. Those 4 words, whispered through secure phone lines, set an entire operation into motion, from official announcements to flag protocol, even the timing of bells and gun salutes. But here's the thing, that code was for her, and her alone. With her passing, the London Bridge Code was used for the final time. Future monarchs will have different code names. King Charles' death, for instance, is planned under Operation Mini Bridge. So the most famous secret phrase in British royal history retired with the Queen, taking its sense of mystery with it. Tradition 5. The symbols we see every day fading away. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth's image was everywhere, on coins, stamps, postboxes, even police helmets. It was so common that most people stopped noticing it. Her profile became part of Britain's daily scenery, as ordinary as street signs or bus stops. But now, those symbols are vanishing. New stamps bear King Charles's profile. Coins with his image are slowly replacing hers. Even red postboxes with ER will remain only until they wear out, then disappear entirely. It's a quiet transformation. One by one, the emblems of the Queen's reign fade from the everyday world, marking the end of the most visible royal legacy in modern British history. And next, we uncover why royal beekeepers had to break the news of the Queen's death. Stay tuned. Tradition 4. The Queen's Christmas broadcast style. Every Christmas Day since 1957, Queen Elizabeth delivered a personal, reflective broadcast, often filmed in a single simple room at Buckingham Palace or Windsor, surrounded by family photos and quiet symbolism. Her tone was steady, personal, yet formal, blending faith, family, and national milestones. King Charles continues the Christmas message tradition, but the style and intimacy Queen Elizabeth created ended with her. His speeches carry a different voice, a different presence. The era of Queen Elizabeth's calm, grandmotherly Christmas addresses, comforting millions through wars, recessions, and jubilees, now belongs to history. Tradition 3. The visits that stopped forever. Across decades, Queen Elizabeth made hundreds of personal visits to charities, schools, hospitals, and local communities. She wasn't just a patron on paper. She showed up in person, shaking hands, opening buildings, listening to stories. Those visits often carried the weight of tradition. Some institutions waited years for their royal day, knowing the Queen's appearance would become part of their history. After her death, many patronages shifted to King Charles or other royals. But the personal connection, the woman who had opened everything from hospitals to village halls, ended with her. The royal family continues the work, yes, but the era of her visits, spanning 7 decades, closed quietly the day she passed. Tradition 2. The bees who heard the news. Among the strangest royal rituals was something called telling the bees. For centuries, beekeepers believed that if you didn't inform the hives about a death in the household, the bees might stop producing honey, or even leave altogether. So when Queen Elizabeth passed away, the royal beekeeper went to Buckingham Palace and Clarence House, gently tapped each hive, and told the bees, "Your mistress is gone, but your master is King Charles now." It sounds like folklore, but it really happened. And because this tradition was tied to her personally, it ended with her. No future monarch will have quite the same bond between crown and hive, making this one of the strangest royal customs to vanish with the Queen. Tradition 1. The Elizabethan Age itself. Some traditions aren't ceremonies or rituals, they're eras. With Queen Elizabeth's passing, Britain didn't just lose a monarch. It lost the Elizabethan Age, a 70-year span that shaped modern Britain, the Commonwealth, and the image of the monarchy itself. She became queen when Winston Churchill was still prime minister, when television was black and white, when empires were fading and a new world was forming. Her reign carried the monarchy from horse-drawn carriages into the age of smartphones and space travel. When she died, that bridge between centuries closed. Future kings will rule, but the Elizabethan Age, with all its ceremonies, symbols, and style, will never return. From bees to bagpipes, funeral rites to fading symbols, these weren't just royal customs, they were pieces of a 70-year story. And when Queen Elizabeth passed, they vanished with her, leaving history a little quieter, a little emptier. If you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video.